And that's pretty much where I am at. Questions, and and I'm more than happy to answer questions about other things too if you want to, ask me about anything else. But I mean, character development, it doesn't have to be just about sex. Sexuality, however, is just a big part of developing character, but I'll answer anything.
Is it okay to, like when you're making characters, when you put them in the book, is it okay to give, when you're first introducing them in scenes, and like, is it okay to give them the person something of a background, or should you just save that for later? Or when does the background of a character come into play?
Usually the way I try and do it is how they interact in the very first scene. Like in the first scene of If I Were You, she's reading a very sexy journal entry, and it's very sexy. Like when the online narrator for the audio book, I was like, God, did I write that? I mean, it's meant to be shocking, and it is, because when there's a knock on her door, she's immediately like, oh my God, I'm a school teacher. I'm not supposed to be reading this. So you see how right there, she read it, she's shocked, she's a school teacher, But it wasn't because I went, oh, she's a school teacher. It was because she's reacting to something and she feels guilty, like I just got back from sitting in a classroom full of kids. So yeah, you definitely want to do it, but just find a way within the scene that's moving the story along to do it. Don't just start it with a narrative kind of thing. The worst thing you can do is to start throwing a narrative in there that's just, here's my backstory. And I did it when I started. And I, every once in a while, I still want to do it. When I was writing my Zodiac series for Source Books, they are G-Techs is what I call them, and they are soldiers that had alien DNA, in them. So super soldiers. And it was from an Area 51 experiment. Well, every book that I did, I felt like I needed to give the whole backstory, what happened for the G-Techs and everything. And I struggled every single book on how to weave that because it was so technical and all the alien and the background, and that can be rough, but you can't do it in narrative. And I can't tell you the hours I spent rewriting first chapters for that reason with that series. It was torture. When you're writing a series, that backstory can be rough. The thing I love about these books is that literally this book ends and the second later this book starts. So you're expected as a reader to have read it. I still weave a little, but I don't have to go and do the backstory. But I will tell you, the first time I did this, when I wrote book 2, I had to go back and I went, I just wrote this just like I would if the story ended in book 1. And gave a whole bunch of backstory that I didn't need to give because it ends and it starts. So when you're writing an ongoing series that doesn't end, it's even more important that you don't give a whole bunch of backstory in the next book. You should literally be able to pick up these books, page, it ends, next page, next page. It starts just like that. It's like one book split in 3 or 5. That was a really long answer to that, though, right?
We have a question from the online audience. It's actually a very specific question about someone's work in progress, and she writes romantic suspense. And this is what she says. I have a character in one of my stories who is very damaged and is overly sexual when she meets her love interest. It is later revealed that she was abused by her ex-boyfriend, physically, sexually, and emotionally. My character had blocked a lot of this out because she was also using drugs during the time with the ex to get herself through what was happening. Later, with this new love interest, she has the abuse shown in nightmares as they come to the light for the character. And her question is, how much would you recommend showing of the abuse that she endured with the ex?
That's a tough question to ask or to answer, because without knowing the story and how dark you're going and how deep you're going. But I tend to go pretty deep with it. I mean, and my character had a bad background, and I didn't show the actual events that can be kind of rough for some people to read, but I wouldn't be opposed to it in the right story, in the right moment. I mean, I say The great thing about, I'm going to delve into this, self-publishing, is that it opened the door to being able to go wherever we want to go as writers. It used to be that we were told we had to fit into a box, and we don't anymore. And publishers know that now too, and I'm so glad for that, because now, we can work with amazing editors, and the whole realm of publishing is opened up. And I don't think that you have to feel like you can't go there. I think you can. And I'll give an example. My Zodiac series again, when it's Source Books, one of the things they told me, my hero, he was in Afghanistan, and there was a teenager that was about to kill his buddy, and I had him kill the teenager. He was a terrorist. But that was going to affect his psyche in the future, and I was told I couldn't do that. The teenager could not die. He had to be knocked out. And that was what traditional publishing was in the past. There was a box, and rape would not absolutely fit in that box. But this is a new world, and you can go there. And so I say, if it feels right, do it. One of the things I can't stress enough, and one of the reasons why I think this series resonated to people, is I went there. I went dark. I told the truth. All happy things don't happen. Because in reality, in real life, when do all happy things happen? And if you read a story and everything's happy, do you believe it?
No.
I mean, to me, the most inspiring story is that somebody went through hell and back and survived it. Those are the characters I connect with. And I think that that's why self-publishing has brought so many passionate readers, because they get to get real stories. We can go where we want to go, and readers grab them, and they do it. But, I mean, that's a whole other topic, and I'm an advocate of not putting all your eggs in one basket and not doing all self-publishing or all traditional. That's, again, another thing. But I still think no matter what the long-term effect of self-publishing is, whether it stays around, whether it doesn't, that kind of thing, the impact it had was, for us as writers, opened us up. And love that. So go there. You can always be pulled back by an editor, but it's harder for them to push you to go there. And I've had editors tell me that. So let them pull you back if they have to. Yes.
Okay. What if you've never been there? How do you write this kind of stuff if, like, for example, you're a virgin or have never had a really, really serious boyfriend? Do you have to wait until it's something that you have experienced, or?
No, because I didn't do half the stuff in my books. Might have been nice to, but I didn't. And and I certainly, you think about somebody writing a murder mystery or whatever, they're not going out and physically killing people. They're researching. It can be experiencing the emotions through movies. One of my Nights of White books, I watched a supernatural marathon because I was trying to get some sort of idea of what, God, I'm in this town and there's a demon and what am I going to do? You do. And then I'm sitting there watching Sam and Dean. And it's like, yes, I know what I'm going to do. Thank you, Sam and Dean Winchester. You do what you got to do to trigger it, I used to never watch scary movies, but Diego's obsessed with them, and now I'm actually glad that he makes me, because screaming, why are you going in that door? No feeling.
Right.
I can write so much better. But I don't actually have a slasher at my back, So just find things that you can connect to that stir those emotions. I just recently, when I was writing my last book, reordered an old movie that I remember making me bawl like a baby, embarrass my son in the movies, Hope Floats. Because, I don't know, I was going through something at the time, and it's, oh my God, I bawled like just a baby in the theater. My son and you too. And my son was a teenager at the time. He's going, Mom, I told you I'd go to the movies with you. But yeah. But I wanted to feel that emotion to write it. And so reach out for whatever you have to stir that emotion. It does not have to be a fight with your husband. Or you can be mad at it, but and feel those emotions. I mean, I joke not too long ago. They've got to feel real. I mean, when I'm at the gym, a lot of times I'm thinking through what I'm going to write, and Diego came up to me one day and he says, "Lisa, what's wrong?" And I went, "Nothing." He went, "Something's wrong." And I went, "Oh, Sarah's really upset right now." He went, "Sarah, she's not real, Lisa, right?" And I went, "Yes, she is. She's real." I mean, these characters are so real to me. But I mean, in my head, I was feeling she was having a fight with Chris, and I just, I was feeling it. So whatever makes you feel that passionate that you could be in the gym and everybody's looking at you like you're a crazy person, that's okay. Other questions?
We have another question from the online audience. It's a really interesting question I hadn't thought about before. Someone's asking about showing sex scenes for the good guys, the protagonists, as well as for the antagonist. And her concern is she's torn about making the evil character too relatable, or maybe even making the sex with the evil character more fun and interesting for the reader than the sex with her protagonist.
One of the things an editor told me that I have never forgotten is that the more relatable your evil person is, the better. And the more that your reader is going to get pulled into it and be tormented by it. And so that was like, mind-boggling and changing for me. So don't worry about it. Go for it. They've got to be real. They've got to be so real that they're scary. And the fact that they could be that person next door to you makes them even scarier. That maybe sometimes they seem really human and loving and sweet. And oh my God, they just snapped somebody's neck. That's pretty frightening. If they're just one-dimensional, they can just go snap somebody's neck. What's interesting? What's frightening about that? I mean, chill factor when you think of them loving and hugging and sweet, and then what makes them... Yeah.
I have a question.
Hi, Jenny.
So it's not about sex. I have a question about the song lyrics, because I hear so many mixed answers about song lyrics.
How long, how lengthy it is a factor. And fortunately, I was within what I needed to be, but I would have gotten cut. But, I self-published this to start. And I included them, but I was very careful about very small snippets. It's when you include too long that you get in trouble. And some don't mind. Like Seether, I use the Seether for some of my videos, and Seether doesn't even care if you use their music in your videos. They have that. Well, yeah, I love Seether. They're so great for writing dark, gritty stuff too. But so it's really length. Yeah. So just be careful to very small snippets. Yes.
You said you couldn't go past because you read the sex scene. I went past, like you said, got to 5 or 10 chapters ahead. Oh, God, I write science fiction, so this was a horror show to me. These two have to have sex. So I'm sitting there looking at this chapter, going to write, oh my God.
But
why don't I just kind of let the characters be themselves? Because this was deep into the book. And by that time, I let the guy who was head down, like, oh crap, I got to try that. And I just kind of wrote some because the characters felt alive to me.
See, that's perfect. Yes, that's how it should be. When you get there, you know it's supposed to happen. And the hardest part is you got to have sex in your mind the way they would have it. But if you are them, that becomes easy. But whenever I get stuck, whether it be a sex scene or whether it be any scene at all, Diego will always say to me, something's wrong. Something's wrong. You know that something's wrong with the story. You're going to figure out what it is. 3 days later, I'm going, I don't know what it is. Please help me. And he's like, yes, please figure out what it is, because now we're both dying. But you know, whether it be, if you get to that sex scene and you can't write it, then to me that says, why?
I didn't want to.
Well, that can be it. But it's, you know, I rarely get to a sex scene and say, yippee, I get to write a sex scene. You think because I have a lot of sex in my books that I do? No. Mostly because I know they're going to be emotionally draining. I know that they have to go someplace unique and special. I know that it's going to be days and days of torture. But I cannot skip it because when I get to the other end, I don't know what will be there.
Now I have a question because I'm an avid reader and I've read a ton of different types of books. But I've gotten to the point where, I'm sorry to say, I read my romance books and I've gotten to the point where I have read so many of the scenes that they're starting to sound repetitive. So I just skip over it and I just continue the story. And yet I have read other books where they don't have those scenes in there at all, and yet it sounds fresh and new. What is the verse? I
would say that it's because you're reading one of them that were painted into a box.
You're weird.
I am fine with that.
No, I would say that it's because, and excuse me, I have, my lips are killing me here. I would say it's because you are painted into, or they were painted into a box. They were written as, here's where a sex scene needs to be. It should not be that way. If you can skip the sex scene, then the sex scene was not important. So whether you're a reader or whether you're a writer, the sex scene needs to matter. And if it doesn't to your reader, you failed as a writer.
Because the rest of the story that's in the book is fantastic. But in some of the places, I'm just like, skip that and keep going.
But I'll just tell you that when you were in traditional publishing, it was like, okay, I need to have a sex scene by now. I have to have one. They expect me to have one. And that's how that can happen. So, you know, if it's just a sex scene to have a sex scene, that doesn't mean they don't happen all the time that way. But that's not how a book that stays with you and that becomes your breakout book is written. So there's a difference between writing a book and writing the book, or writing books that really are career-changing, that build, you know, a career. And those little category novels that I wrote, no, they did not create my career, but I will tell you that I learned so much because I wrote so many books so fast, and I had some great editors that taught me a lot. So would I go back and wipe out all that experience that I got and say that that wasn't incredibly valuable to me? No, never. I learned so much, I grew so much, and it's through those experiences that I know a sex scene that's just a sex scene, you know, it's what is different about them versus these. And writing those didn't make me less capable of writing these. I think it made me more capable because I really learned my craft. Your craft is everything. You have to learn your craft. And sometimes people will have the emotional content down, they'll understand a lot of things, but they don't have their craft. Then they get the craft, and in the process of getting the craft, they lose a little bit of the emotional stuff, and they got to find a way to get back to it all, and then suddenly greatness just happens. Yes?
Do you think men can and should write erotica?
Well, I don't even consider that I write erotica, even though some people might say that I do. No, this is, Starz did not decide that they wanted to turn this into a television series because it was erotica, quite the opposite. I think men can write whatever they want to write, though. I think that as artistically, we should go wherever we feel we can go and go there and just go all the way. If you're going to do it, you know. But from the standpoint of, like, you know, this, because you have an erotic, for this series, the erotic element is part of the suspense. She finds the journal. Where's the woman? What is the most trusting thing you can do in your life but to go someplace sexually that you've never been with someone? And what if you shouldn't trust them? What if that puts you in danger? What if you are completely, just everything's pulled down? You've let down these walls that leave you open and bleeding, and it's with someone who could hurt you. but we all risk that in life, right? And isn't that every story really is about that? Sex is just part of the storytelling element to get there. But the TV show is about the character, Sarah, about her journey, about her growth, about connecting with someone. I hope that people with this character will connect with her the way I did. We all have something in our life we want that we're afraid to go after, or we're afraid we'll never have. And what if we take the chance? And then damage in our past that makes us, make those decisions related to that something. It's supposed to be her journey. Sex just happens to be a part of it.
I have another question. For people who are just starting out writing books and things, the view of one person versus the view of many people, if you will. How would you go about, should you try to stick with one until you've done that one good, perfected that one, and then maybe move on to the other one until you've perfected that one, and then you can combine them? Or should you just try and just work with either one?
Meaning where all the different places you're getting advice?
Yeah, like this one. From what I've read from the snippets that we have from your book, it seems like it's all from Sarah's point of view mostly. It's
this
first
series
person view.
Yeah.
Compared to where you know what the guy's thinking, to what the girl's thinking, to even what his best friend's thinking.
But there's the reason that I did first person for this series, which my other series, I have quite a few that aren't that way, is because if you knew what everybody else was thinking, where would the danger be? The danger is you have no idea who wants to hurt her, what's happening. Everything is a clue. Everything is only what she knows, just like only you would know. And that's why it's so important. Just like ultimately Sex and the City, which, it has similarities to Sex and the City, only very dark Sex and the City. And that it's really Carrie Bradshaw's point of view. You know what she's thinking about, life and all. You hear what other people think, but through her ears, and then it's processed through her thought process. So it gives a different experience. For some storytelling, that's the way to go. But for other storytelling, third person or 2 points of view, very important, and I use that frequently. I was just thinking the other day, I've written so many first person. When I go back to my next third person, I'm going to be all over the board. Oh my gosh. If you've ever written first and third and skip back and forth, it can be quite the nightmare to go back and forth. But you can do both and do it very successfully. Is that what you mean, or do you mean something else?
For a writer who's first starting out and they're not sure which one they should even try and start with, or anything. Which first person versus multiple views, which one for them would be kind of an easier one to work with, to figure out?
There's not an easier one. There's only a right one. And how do you know what that is? I think that my storytelling became more profound and deeper when I went first person. And what's ironic about that is I thought that I hated first person. And so maybe it was that stretch, that change that I made, but it changed me as a writer. Even though I have fans who say they love my third person, which I thank you fans who do, I think that it changed who I was as a storyteller. What are the differences? I think if you're starting out, you need to learn to tell both points of view. There's a real value to learning to tell both points of view, because you need to understand the different dimensions to telling a story that way. But so you have to know. Again, it's only what is right, and maybe you won't know it first. Maybe it's when you switch it up that you go, wow, this is where I needed to be. Sometimes when somebody changes genres, it's like, wow, I should have been here. So it's hard to answer that question other than write and try and see where it leads you. What I love about first person is how deep you get into what they feel. You feel it with them, and you hope that the reader does too. There's a removed quality to third person, and out there, looking through a window. Whereas with first person, you become that person. So I like it from that standpoint, and it's my preference for writing now, always. Yes?
When you wrote the If I Were You series, did you write it as one and split it up into 3, or did you do one at a time?
I plotted the whole series, and I wrote book 1 first. And for those of you who don't know the story, I'll tell you the story. I was traditionally publishing, and by many standards, successful. I was making school teacher pay. I was publishing 3 or 4 books a year, and went from leaving a corporate 6-figure job that everybody thought I was crazy to chase this dream, and that's what I was doing. And Diego was a physical therapist, and he got the grand experience of having the feds walk into the office and scream for everybody to get on the ground. And they were in work comp trouble. And suddenly he didn't have a job, and he was like, oh my God, how can this be happening? The feds were in my office. I mean, it was crazy, you know? It was like already I'd taken this risk. We were on school teacher pay. Now we lost his pay. And so he decided, or I saw an ad for an auction, and he went to an auction, a storage auction, before Storage Wars existed. And he went and he bought a unit. We agreed he'd spend $300. He spent $8. And we were about to get split up. I mean, oh my God, I was furious. How are we going to pay the rent? Blah, 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 blah. And then he was gloating several days later when we made $3,000. Oh yeah, gloat. But anyway, we were hooked. But it was dirty work. And the way that we survived was dig through the boxes, find what to sell. I had to make so many words per day, list so many things out of the storage units. It was a little piece of hell. It's dirty, nasty work, and there's not a treasure in every unit. Oh my gosh, you know, there's just not. You want there to be, and you're searching for it. And so in one of the units, there was a journal. And Diego was sick, and he found it, and he started reading. And he became like a chick. Oh my God, she's pregnant. The police are next door. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, my God, I'm trying to make word count. Will you shut up? You know? I mean, he'd sit back up. I mean, he was crazy. So he's like, you have to write something where somebody finds a journal and they get led into danger and somebody dies or they become a zombie. Yes. And I'm like, yeah, always a zombie. No, I told you love scary movies. And so I was very contracted for Harlequin at the time. I couldn't, but ideas started going in my head. And I started taking notes, and he kept nagging. God, he can nag. You gotta write it. The man can nag. And but I'm glad he did. It was a blessing. So eventually, I started writing it in third person, and it didn't feel right. And I stopped and started writing it in first person. And I actually gave it to an agent and editor, and had an editor love it, who transferred it to a higher level editor where it sat for a year. That's how traditional publishing can work. And that line that it was going to be for got slashed right before they were about to offer. I could not believe it. And I went, you know what? This is the best I've ever been. And I had already started doing some indie self-publishing, and I had gone from making what I was making in a year to making what I was in about a month to every 6 weeks. It had changed my life. We were no longer hurting. We were in this whole different world. And I'm like, I don't have to traditionally publish this. I can self-publish it. I've already seen success with self-publishing, so I think I'll self-publish it. But I don't know why. It's that connection. You feel like, oh, traditional publishing's better. Why we always feel like that, I don't know. But I still had it, even though here I'm making more money than I was making in a whole year, and I still felt that. Why? I don't know, but I did. So my agent at the time pretty much said, well, nobody's going to buy this. And I'm like, this is crazy. I said, fine, I'm going to go find somebody to sell my foreign rights. And because your foreign rights person won't even sell it because it's self-published. And so I called my agent now, and she's like, I know your work, and I normally don't take somebody on just for that, but I'm interested in you. So, you know, I send her over all my stuff. She's going to do all my indie stuff for self-publishing. And I said, by the way, here's my baby. I'm going to publish it on August the 24th. I've done this big campaign. It's my it book. It's the best I've ever been. And she read it, and she called me and went, oh my God, let me take it to some, oh, well, let me backtrack. I left out something really important. When my agent said it wasn't publishable, I decided to go to a couple of my editors I knew at a couple of the big houses. And one of them offered me $10,000 for 2 books. I laughed because of what I was making with my indie publishing, and I said no. And it was a very surreal moment because I had been on bended knees for publishing for so long. You know, you want that single title deal. And so I walked away from it. Anyway, so I send her my baby. This is it. This is the one I turned down a deal for. It's some self-publishing. And she's like, let me take it to some publishing houses. I'm like, I've been down that path. I'm not taking $10,000 for 2 books. And she went, no, let me take it to some big wigs. I believe in it that much. And I'm like, whatever. Okay, go ahead, you know. And I published on August 24th. 12 days later, I took a high 6-figure deal, and we had a TV deal 2 months later. So the moral of the story is to believe in yourself. But again, what did I talk about? About how all that traditional publishing I did, how much I learned, how much I experienced. So yeah, indie worked for me, but I also had a lot of experience. I learned a lot. So there's a right place to be, a right time to make it happen. For some people, that's earlier than other people. I needed those years of experience to get there. I'm not advocating that you can go straight to self-publishing and skip all that, because I don't think that I could have at all. Yes?
I have another question, because I'm trying to write a fantasy fiction. I had the book done. It was over 11,000 words to me, and I thought that was great. I was getting ready to write the next book that was going to continue it. And then I had somebody go, that's not enough for a book. That's not even enough for a novella. I mean, where do you get to the point where you're like, oh wait, no, this is enough. This is enough because I want to continue it in something else.
Well, I mean, for self-publishing, you can publish any length. That's the great thing about self-publishing. If you want to publish something that's 11,000 words, you can publish it. If you want to publish something that's 300,000 words, you can publish it. But there's still some standards that what readers expect that you really need to stay within. If you're going to do, a novella or a novel, or how you're going to price your things, all those things are related to what the length is. And if you want to get into traditional publishing, you absolutely have to meet minimum guidelines for word count and such. And where do you learn that? I mean, I can't stress enough events like this. This is so important. Your RWA is where I learned so much. What was the first thing I did? Well, I came out of the staffing industry. I felt like I knew. I can say that I worked so hard. I feel like I was one of the best in the business. I knew my stuff. I knew better. I knew HR better than most HR people. I knew HR better than most HR attorneys. I told a few of them, "Can you please read your legal, documents?" That's what I wanted to feel like I knew for traditional publishing, although it's ever changing, and so that's a real challenge. But so the first thing I did was go to conventions, listen. Some of the best experiences I had was in the beginning. I remember going to one of my very first Florida convention. I went to a Florida convention, and a very big name author. I was so fortunate to be in it. She said, "We're going to talk about contracts," and they're turning off the recorder. I'm not going to let them record, and let's talk down and dirty contracts. And I had all these New York Times authors sitting around me, scribbling down notes, going, "Why hasn't my agent told me this, blah, blah, blah." And let me tell you, most of them were not with their agents later. Because it was about option clauses and all the kinds of things that you need to know, because publishing is not just publishing. You have to protect your rights. You have to be smart and savvy and knowledgeable. And all I can say is the best thing you can do is to learn everything you can learn. But one thing that I will warn people about is you can't keep learning things from people who don't know more than you either. You have to go to places where you learn from people who have more experience. And, it's like your critique group. You can outgrow your critique group because you're all the same level. How do you get to another level? That can be a challenge, though, because more experienced writers, like right now, I'm on such deadline. I mean, literally, my daughter-in-law got H1N1 and almost died. And I have never been late on a deadline, but I just now was a week late, and it was because, literally everything I wrote when I was in the hospital while she was in life support was absolute crap. I knew it when I looked at it. But I mean, how many times do you have someone who's on life support almost dying while you're writing a book? But the point is I came back and I was already on a tight deadline, and then I came back and I had that, and I had this commitment, which I'm very eager and excited to be here. But the point is that we, as more experienced authors, oftentimes are on such tight deadlines that we don't have as much time to give. So going to the conventions or going to events like this when we can and we can help a lot of people at once is a really good way to do that. I can't stress it enough. I mean, that event that I went to in Florida where she took that contract stuff was stuff that I have to this day not forgotten. It was that valuable. Yes.
Another question from our online audience. The question is, when your characters are in a dark place, how do you surround yourself to get into that mood? And I think she means you personally. What do you do?
Music helps me so much. I can't stress that enough. I talked about Seether. I didn't even know who Seether was before I wrote this series. That was way too dark for me. But I needed, now I love Seether. I mean, Lifehouse, I mean, because the words resonated to what the characters are feeling. So, music to me is probably the number one thing that helps me with that.
And another question from the online audience. There's a question, do you think it's important to have an agent if you're planning to do indie publishing?
Yes. And I hear so many authors say no, and I know some are going to be going, no, Lisa, I agree with that. So this is my opinion. Everything I say is always my opinion. But you just heard my story about If I Were You, right? It was an agent that made that happen for me. However, it was my willingness to walk away from an agent that got me to her. So you have to be smart, you have to believe in yourself, you have to be savvy, but my agent is like my business partner, and that's what they have to be. One of the biggest mistakes authors make is they think, oh, an agent, okay, whatever you want. Just return my email whenever you want, just this or that. It should not be that kind of relationship. You should have mutual respect. Your agent respects you, and you respect your agent and their time too, because your agent has other clients. They're trying to make a living too. They don't solely make their living off of you. You can't be this demanding, oh my God, I gotta have this, and this, because that's not fair to them either. No matter how much money that you've made for them, past or present, they only get a percentage. Respect them. But it's also for self-publishing, your indie rights, your audio rights, or your foreign rights, your audio rights. Are you going to take a New York contract? Are you not? What about television and all of that? I mean, if you don't have an agent, you are not going to have as many opportunities. If you have the wrong agent, you're not going to have as many opportunities. And I just always like to bring up, do not, please, people, pay an agent a percentage of your indie income. No. If they want it, they are the wrong agent. My agent does not take a percentage of my indie work. If she sells my indie work to New York, yes, she gets her percentage. But you know what? She doesn't expect anything different because she's very ethical, and that matters. So, yes, but it has to be the right agent. Yes, sir.
At what stage, talking about agents, at what stage in a writer's career does one think about getting an agent?
If you feel like you have something ready for market and you want to go traditionally published right out of the gate, then yes, that's what to do. And I think that most authors that aren't experienced should consider going traditional first in talking to agents, simply because, and my agent's kind of changed my opinion on this. At one point I wasn't so sure I agreed with this, but she reminded me, I get so many authors that they send these manuscripts in and they think they're ready, but they so are not ready. And it's the agents that help them see that they're not ready, maybe even help them develop. And not only that, if you do end up with a publishing house, you have these experienced editors that work with you that help you develop and become a better author. So I think that as soon as you think it's ready for market, start talking to agents. I will, hold on one second. I want to also mention something because I think it can be very discouraging for authors. They don't know, and I wish I understood this. The market has cycles. Like paranormal is so not hot right now. You know, you can send out a ton of paranormal proposals right now. The chances you're going to get bought are not high. That doesn't mean a year from now that same proposal might not be terrific. So it's not always you. It's the market, the timing, what is the cycle at the time. One of the great things about indie publishing is you can jump on that cycle and get in it really quick. Like when New Adult was so hot, a lot of people jumped in. New Adult's starting to get saturated now. So there's cycles. And how an agent will perceive you or receive you, it can be a reflection on that, not necessarily you as well. Yes?
Oh, how do you go about even finding an agent?
Well, you have to have a manuscript ready because they're going to want to complete. And then there's agent guides that you just you can pick up at the bookstore. And oh gosh, it's been so long since I did. A Publisher's Marketplace is my absolute favorite resource in this industry. Publishersmarketplace.com. It's $20 a month. And what it is it will list all the deals in the industry. And you can see, okay, if somebody got a major deal or a good deal or a nice deal, how many people, what agents are selling books in your genre? What are they selling them for? Do you want an agent who's selling them for $10,000 or do you want the agent who's selling them for 6 figures? Choose your agents wisely, folks, you know, and publishersmarketplace.com, that's the place to see where all the deals are being made.
Can I add 2 things to that?
Yes.
Publishers Marketplace has a free service called Publishers Lunch, and you can sign up for that for free. And you don't get the full report that people who pay for the subscription get, but you can get some information, and you can sample it that way to see if that's a good resource for you. The other resource I wanted to recommend is Writer's Digest has a blog written by Chuck Sambucino, and he profiles new agents. And so you can often find who are the new hungry agents or people who have moved from one agency to another or struck out on their own in an agency, maybe coming over from the editor side and starting an agency. And he will list all the different things about them as far as what they're looking for, what they don't want, how you get in touch with them, and that sort of thing.
And
what was the gentleman's name again?
Chuck Sambucino. I think I'm saying his name right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And let me just say, sometimes the young, hungry agents are the best agents. The thing about agenting is it's like sales. If you've ever experienced sales where people get residual income from sales and they start getting where they are making lots of money so they don't have to keep making lots of money. If they're with an agency that doesn't set up that says if you don't keep producing so much money, then you lose, you know, your job and then all your residual income, which some of them are, that can be a problem. They can get kind of, hey, I'm a fat cat. So just because they've done lots of big deals for people in the past doesn't mean that they're still doing them now. Publishers Marketplace does help you see that. A young, hungry agent can be great. However, a young, inexperienced agent can be very bad. I mean, they have to understand your rights. They have to have, the balls to negotiate your contracts properly. And it can be scary. I mean, when I was negotiating this contract, it was the biggest contract in my career, my first deal with this, and I just signed a second one, but and it was much less scary. But the first time I was like, oh my God, just take it. Yes, whatever they want. I mean, you know, I was just, you know, she's like, no. The second time around, I was, you know, a cool cat, you know, because she trained me. She had trained me. You know, there's a saying that they say in the boardroom, and it's so true in all areas of business, surround yourself by people who know more than you. Make sure they really do, though.
So Lisa, you are kind of the queen of Facebook and social media. Where do you, I mean, I know where you find the time because I know you are a workaholic, but where do you find the time to, I mean, you are so good at social media.
Oh, thank you.
Jason Momoa thing. Right on.
Oh, I'm a workaholic, as Diego. He, in fact, today we took just a couple hours to do something. It was like, we had coffee together. I mean, it was like, I mean, I'm a workaholic, so I don't know that I can say that that's necessarily the answer, but for me, I see it as I have a window of opportunity right now where my career is really hot, and I'm taking every darn second of it.
So how do you schedule that so that you can get those Facebook and tweets throughout the day and still?
Well, you can schedule it in advance, and I do. I schedule a whole day in advance. And I have this new great bike that has a computer tray on it, so I can do my workout, and I do a lot of my social media stuff for the next day on that exercise bike. It's a little godsend, and it was only $2.99. That thing is awesome. Because I'm a workout addict. And now the one negative that's been for me, though, is that I often think of my pot lines while doing cardio, so I'm struggling a little with that because that's important for me. It's my thinking time. But yeah, I work 7 days a week, pretty much year-round. I do. I'm a workaholic. But again, I have a window of time in my life right now where my career is hot, and I'm not going to let it pass me by. And the thing is I've spent a lot of time in my life working really long and hard. This time I can see the results, and so it's at least easier from that standpoint. But it's hard. Schedule in advance, though. You can pre-schedule everything on Facebook.
You said that you listened to music and like see it there and stuff like that to get into the dark places that your characters sometimes go depending on the story. In a reverse question, I'm curious, so how do you get out? So let's say that your character is like really, really depressed, she's going through something that absolutely stinks, everybody's looking at you like you're insane because you're in her head. How do you pull yourself back out? And
it's very hard sometimes. When I finished Being Me, there's a really devastating scene at the end, and I finished at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I think I went to sleep about 7:30. I was just an emotional wreck, and the whole next day I didn't know what to do with myself because I was still there, and it was done, and it had happened, and I knew it was coming. But I was just that emotionally invested in it. And I just finished No In Between, the 4th book in the series, Sunday night, and I feel about the same way still. I mean, yesterday I literally at one point, of course I hadn't slept in a couple weeks. I mean, really had slept 4 and 5 hours a night, and some nights less, but I had to lay down and go to sleep. I did in the middle of the day, which is very rare for me, but I just felt like crap. I didn't help you much on the social media stuff, though, did I? Other than you can schedule, and don't sleep. I will say, though, the only other thing I'll say on that is I truly enjoy interacting with fans. So if you're going to do it, don't go through the motions and don't make it, I'm just doing it because I'm supposed to do it. You got to really get into it. People know if you really genuinely are interested in what they're saying and interacting with you. And I am. And every time somebody said, my God, I stayed up all night reading your books, Lisa, I get a flutter in my heart. I mean, it means so much. And I can't imagine that'll ever go away. But I want them to know it, too. I'm not going to let them post it on my Facebook and not say, thank you.
Someone shared online that one way to schedule your posts in advance is to use Hootsuite, Hootsuite. I personally haven't figured out how to use it yet, but theoretically you can schedule out what posts you want to have happen
for
where
Twitter.
And when.
Except that I post on Facebook and feed it to my Twitter. And so then I get the double bang. But you have to make sure that you're responding to people on Twitter. So I don't have to go in and schedule my Twitter stuff because my Twitter stuff is my Facebook stuff. And I use Facebook a lot for new release promotions, for contests, for giveaways. You know that, I'm sure. It's probably my biggest resource. I had, to tell you the power your Facebook page can get, I just recommended somebody's page, and they ended up with like 3,000 new followers in 2 days. And I was like, oh. I had no idea that I knew that my Facebook page had grown and had gotten some, energy behind it, but I had never had anything like that happen, and I was like, wow. So is there a value, or even when people aren't necessarily, you don't see them interacting, like they didn't all respond to my post, they just went and liked our page. So it's you can do little things to test how it's working. Do something and then see what the result is. Like yesterday I posted that I was giving away, I had a contest and I had a raffle chapter. And it was something that a blog tour company was doing for me. And I didn't think they had that many entries. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm giving away these prizes, they have that many entries. And I posted on my Facebook page and they had like 4,000 more entries like in hours. So even though nobody hardly commented to my Facebook post, the results was there. So, the way to see if your social media is working is use things where you can judge, is it getting results? And sometimes that's hard, but there's ways, like what I just said, that you can tell. Do a raffle chapter that you post there, see if you got entries from it. Look for ways to see if that'll work. Anyone else? I've spent you all out. It's a sex scene, right?
I do have one question, and I've been trying to figure out what to do. I want to go ahead and add more details, more things, not necessarily the characters, but of the scenes and everything in my stories. But I myself am not very good at that, and I was seriously looking at getting a ghostwriter to help me for things that I myself am not good at, that I struggle with, and because I'm struggling with it, I'm not getting past it at all.
Well, I mean, a content editor is what you could use to start out, and some new authors do use content editors to help them with those things. And certainly I think that there can be a value to that. If you know, the thing is a weakness is not a weakness if you know that it exists, because you can embrace it. Like, I make errors in my own work. I cannot catch them. I can read the sentence 10 times and there will be a "the" that should be there and I won't see it. I know. So I have always had my work copy edited, even before I started indie publishing. So when people are like, oh, but if you indie publish, you got to get a copy editor, blah, blah, I'm like, so I do that anyway. Because I know that little D and A or whatever, it's not going to be there. Because I read my sentences the way I think them in my head, the way my character's saying them. So I know that about me. So whatever, embracing whatever you think your weakness is, therefore makes it not a weakness.
So content editor is pretty much a ghostwriter, or is that a difference in there?
Well, a ghostwriter writes the book for you and says it's yours. A content editor helps you learn to do it yourself and shows you where you need to do it, and therefore you become a better writer and you don't need somebody in the future. Okay. That's what you want. So if you need help, get a content editor. And honestly, I think a content editor can be better than a critique group, because the problems you have with a critique group is if you're all not published, how do you know which one of you knows what you're doing? You know? It's a problem.
I can partially answer for helper. Critique group, the problem with them is, I love them, but they'll tell you what's wrong, but they don't necessarily tell you how to fix it.
It's because they don't always know, yeah.
They don't always know, but I found like, for me, writing a description is like pulling teeth, that I keep at it, and there's certain days I can write a description, and those are the days I do it, and eventually I get to it, and it gets in there, but it's taken me a long time to be able to write some of those areas well. So just keep trying.
Yeah, I can't stress it enough. Keep writing. I mean, how many books did I write before this happened, folks? So when you hear my story, I'm one of those overnight success in 10 years. How many stories are really like that? They are. And I'll tell you, I know authors, when I started out, writing, I decided that I was going to use my promo background, my sales experience to help supplement my income, so I started doing author promotions. So I worked with a lot of authors, some of them very big names now, some that aren't anymore, but oh my gosh, they were such divas back then. I got to experience people who now will tell you that they make it sound like their career happened overnight, then I know no, they did not. And people that's careers seemed like they were zooming and they treated me like I was dirt under their feet. That now, yeah. You know, this is the thing, what goes up must come down is something that is a business reality. Genres change, industry changes. The advice I would have given you on indie publishing, or did give even the last time I was here, would definitely be different right now. The industry is ever changing. I cannot stress enough to absolutely educate yourself constantly. When I was in the staffing business, I got to see inside every kind of industry you can imagine. And I was someone who dealt with a lot of the CEOs and executives. And I watched so many of them go and succeed and crash and burn. And I saw their struggles, and I saw the way every single industry cycles. There's nothing secure. Diversity and education is everything. But I will also tell you, you're still in a tough position, and that a lot of agents are getting, and I'm only telling you this because I want you to not be hard on yourself. A lot of agents are still going through the top 100 on Amazon, approaching those people, and that's how they're picking their clients. There's some agents that will not pick anyone any other way. You are in a tough situation, but it is changing. It is changing. So, so if you were discouraged a little, you don't have to be quite as discouraged as I would have made you about that in the past. It is changing. It cycles, and New York publishing is adjusting. Indie publishing is changing. There's windows of time and things that change, and if you wait it out, your paranormal will be hot again, your historical will be hot again, whatever it is will be hot again. My prediction is sexy contemporary next. Jenny. Anyway.
You guys ready?